Brothers and sisters, the Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. As Jesus passed by, he saw a man blind from birth. He spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva and smeared the clay on his eyes and said to him, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he went and washed and came back able to see. His neighbors and those who had seen him earlier as a beggar said, "Isn't this the one who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is," but others said, "No, he just looks like him." He said, "I am." They brought the one who was once blind to the Pharisees. Now Jesus had made clay and opened his eyes on a Sabbath. So then the Pharisees also asked him how he was able to see. He said to them, "He put clay on my eyes and I washed them, and now I can see." So some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a sinful man do such signs?" And there was a division among them. So they said to the blind man again, "What do you have to say about him, since he opened your eyes?" He said, "He is a prophet." They answered and said to him, "You were born totally in sin, and are you trying to teach us?" Then they threw him out. When Jesus heard that they had thrown him out, he found him and said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" He answered and said, "Who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and the one speaking with you is he." He said, "I do believe, Lord," and he worshiped him. The Gospel of the Lord.
Well, I was remiss at the very beginning of Mass to introduce to you Father Barry Allaire. Father Barry, a priest of our diocese, served many years, 25 years, I believe, as a teacher at Archbishop Walsh High School, where we first really got to know one another. He was always welcoming me to his classroom to talk on vocations in my time as vocation director, pastor of St. Helens in Hinsdale. Now he is joining us in residence here at St. Gregory's. He's moved into the old Father Francis suite, and he is serving as the priest chaplain next door over at Millard Suburban. And so we welcome you, Father Barry, to St. Gregory's. The gospel we just heard is one of those gospels that we could really build an entire week-long retreat and still not cover it all in detail. And I try to focus really on three particular thoughts for us to share today. First of all, show of hands, it's a low-level question. How many of you have ever been in the situation, if it's in downtown Buffalo or some large city or somewhere where you see someone who is begging on the street? How many of you have ever been in that situation? We all pretty much have been in that situation. Now, I will not ask for a show of hands how you respond in that situation. I won't ask for that. We'll leave that one in your mind and heart. But one of my friends, he works downtown Buffalo, his office is there. He is one of the very unique individuals that, as he takes his walk on lunch hour, he's legendary for this. He takes his walk at lunch hour, and he looks for the individuals who are on the streets looking for a handout. And as soon as he finds one, he locks eye-to-eye contact with them. He will go up to them and basically begin a conversation and ask how they are doing, which almost always results in them asking him for money. And the generous man that he always has money ready to give. I will not ask how many of us handle that situation in the same way, but it is a way that he handles that. And if you really think about that situation, some of us may be walking around the streets of downtown or some large city and be oblivious. We don't even see the person, maybe preoccupied with our own matters of life. Some of us may see the individual, but, do everything to look the other way, so they're not going to engage us in a conversation or ask us for something. And probably fewer of us are like my friend who will lock eye to eye and begin the conversation. Real question, how much do we see and how blind are we at times to what is going on around us? Sometimes I suppose we can all look away and choose to be blind in a situation. Sometimes we're genuinely blind, we don't see it. Sometimes we choose to be blind in a situation, and sometimes we choose to see what is going on around us. And as we celebrate Lent, it's really a time for all of us to look at those areas that we may be experiencing blindness, maybe an area that we are not even aware of, we're oblivious to it, or some place where we definitely look the other way. And really, if we're honest, all of us, myself included, we all have areas of blindness. And really, when we think about our faith, is there some area of blindness in our faith? And if so, what is it that we're going to do during Lent to see that more clearly? If we have a point of faith that we find hard to believe, statistically, so many Catholics, I am told, do not really believe in the real presence of Jesus in the Eucharist, which is really tragic. If that is something you struggle with, maybe something you're blinded to, what will you do during Lent this year to really try to understand? At Christmas we gave away copies of Dr. Hahn's book, The Lamb's Supper, beautiful, beautiful faith-filled book on the Eucharist. We still have copies left, so if you would like one, just tell me, free of charge, Is forgiveness, something we struggle with. Why do I have to go to confession? Lent is always wonderful because we'll get, someone, usually many someones who will come in and say, it's been 30 years or 40 years since I've come to confession. And our words are not words of chastisement, what took you so long, but words of welcome and saying, thank God for your courage to be here today. And so often our Catholics do not believe that we need to go to confession, even though Jesus in the Scripture very clearly gave that power to forgive sin to Peter and the apostles. Is there some point of faith that you struggle with? And if so, what will you do during this Lent to try to see more clearly? Sometimes we struggle with other teachings of the church, if they be teachings of human life. Now the issue of euthanasia is so strong, teachings of the meaning of marriage, and teachings in medical ethics, and of course healthcare reform is not only a political issue, it's an issue that our bishops have talked about for so long and tried to get the attention of our leaders to work with them. After all, who owns the majority of the hospitals in this country? The Catholic Church. We have something to say about medical ethics, and we have something to say about health care and reform therein. If we struggle with some teachings there, something we do not see, what are we doing to try to understand? If it be going to the catechism, reading encyclicals of the popes, perhaps going to the New York State Catholic Conference of Bishops or the United States Catholic Conference of Bishops, websites where there are documents after documents, teachings explaining what we really believe. So many think they know what we believe, and very often when they read these websites, these articles, they realize that they were not told correctly the truth of our faith. Simple question, is there something you're blind to? And if so, what are you going to do in these remaining couple weeks to alleviate that blindness? Secondly, spiritual sight is dependent on faith. To have acute spiritual vision or sight, we must have faith. And a simple question, how much faith do you really have? It's a question we should all ask ourselves. I ask myself that one regularly. If you notice in the gospel today, Jesus instructed the blind man, he did some organic work there with clay and spit, but now go to the pool of Siloam and wash. And what did this man do? He immediately went. He had complete faith. He didn't question. He didn't say, why are you asking me to do that? He just went. And it's really a reference to an Old Testament story that I'm sure maybe many of you will know. We hear the story of Naaman the Syrian general who had leprosy, and he traveled great distance to go see Elisha the prophet, and Elisha the prophet just looked at him. He wanted a healing from Elisha, and Elisha the prophet said, well, just go to the Jordan and wash 7 times, and your leprosy will be gone. And Naaman didn't believe it, and he became angry and outraged, and he said, well, why would I do something like that? The water in Syria is far better than the water of the Jordan. That's what he said. Why would I do that? That's stupid. But somebody reasoned with him, and he went, and he washed 7 times. The leprosy was healed. Naaman didn't have that complete faith, but this blind man did. Can we accept something just in faith? It's harder to do that today. We want evidence, and more today we struggle to simply accept something in faith. Maybe even after we study our faith, we just can't seem to accept it, but are we willing to say, yes, I will accept and believe this because it has come to us through tradition, through Scripture, through our church? Can we accept something in faith, or do we go another way? Thirdly, the Pharisees, we took the short form of the reading, but I think you could see very clearly the Pharisees were again after Jesus. They were accusing him of work on the Sabbath, and they said, well, if this man was really a prophet, he wouldn't be doing these things. And Jesus' response, which we heard part of in the short form of the reading, Jesus' response is really a response of charity. And this is one of many instances where Jesus said, well, more important than laws and rules is charity. Charity is the good of others. And charity, looking for the good of others, has to take precedence over every command and law. Do we see the needs of others? Just as my friend walking downtown, he makes a point to see the needs of those in our community in dire strait. Do we see the needs of others? And charity is part of the 3 key disciplines of Lent, and Catholic Charities is always during Lent, and I'd like to say a word about Catholic Charities today and our call to charity. In 2015, so 2 years ago, at St. Gregory's, we had 2,045 families of the parish make a contribution to Catholic Charities. It totaled $726,037. Last year, 2016, we had 1,899 families give to Catholic Charities from St. Greg, so it's a change of 100 and about 100 and a half, just short of that, 146. And we raised $674,883 for Catholic Charities last year. Our goal this year is $688,000 for Catholic Charities. We're just short of the halfway mark, so many of you have already been so generous, and we're so very thankful. But when I look at those numbers, and I know we have 6,000 families in the parish, and 1,899 have chosen to be part of Catholic Charities, it means there's about 4,000 of us who are looking the other way, and we're choosing not to be part of that charity, which is the main service of charity of our church in the Diocese of Buffalo. And this year, I simply ask if you are one of those who really have not been involved in being part of Catholic Charities to really consider doing so this year. To make some type of a gift, to see the needs in our community, to respond. And I did a little math, and I said, gee, if all of the families who did not give last year gave $50, that would be $200,000. It's a tremendous amount of money for work of charity in the name of the Catholic Church. If each of those families gave just $25, it would be $100,000. If each of those families just gave $10, it would be $40,000 of service work that we can accomplish in Catholic Charities. So if you've not been part of that, I ask you to please consider seeing those needs and responding. For the 1,899 who were so generous last year and were in that position to see these needs and respond, I thank you and ask you to continue to be so generous. Every year, the number of our donors go down, and it's a direct parallel to the number of funerals we celebrate. Many of our older parishioners who pass away are those who are so generous to Catholic Charities. And so those of you who do regularly give and see those needs, I thank you, and I ask you to please continue to be as generous as you can. And we got a number of our teenagers here and college students. At confirmation, I have you sign up on the parish on your own. And part of that is to, have you realize you're an adult in the faith and to take responsibility, and also to learn to be part of all of what goes on at St. Greg's and to learn to be part of what goes on in the diocese. And, I'm not looking for you to make up $1 million gap here, but I do encourage and really challenge all of our youth to be involved in Catholic Charities. Even if you just give $1 or $2, you can say that you have seen the needs of the less fortunate of Western New York, and you were part of feeding those who are hungry and clothing those who are naked, providing emergency aid for those in emergency need, medical assistance who cannot afford it, and tremendous counseling services for families and married couples and youth. I really encourage our youth to be part of this. Next weekend and the weekend after, we'll have a second collection, and that will be for Catholic Charities. You can bring your cards. You should have received them in the mail by now, and if not, we'll have blank cards available for you to fill one out and be part of Catholic Charities. My friend was one of the few who actually made eye-to-eye contact with those in need, went out of his way to speak to them, and actually was willing to give something to help them. Many of us simply look the other way in those moments of charity. I ask you, who would you rather be? Do you want to be the one who sees the need and addresses it, or do you want to be the one who looks the other way? And that's in matters of our own faith and understanding it, matters to respond in faith even if we find it hard to accept, and matters to respond in charity in the service of our brothers and sisters.